Welcome back, everyone. This continues and concludes my latest video, The American Loop, a Souls game. So far, for those who have not seen the first video, I explored two topics. In the first, I identified the arbiters of the trauma economy, neolibs and neocons, essentially. Additionally, their weapon of choice. In the second part, I did a 4-piece breakdown of the particularly interesting sources I have cited rather frequently in recent times, gathering data and condensing it into comprehensive information. I drew comparisons and conclusions about memes and language and the parasitic properties taken on when they are deployed by the PMCs. Now, let us begin. Part 3. Distribution of trauma to society. For those who have never played a Souls game or non-gamers at large, this subgenre is known for its brutal difficulty, defined by seemingly impossible challenges and dark themes, inspired by Kentaro Miura's Berserk, a dark fantasy, a manga that follows the story of a man named Guts, the Black Swordsman, a towering, war-hardened male who wields a massive sword which he uses to slay demons that could just as easily tear him apart. The idea that I'm getting at here with Souls games and Berserk is that hardships, the underlying theme here, builds character, as seen with these two examples. America, for all intents and purposes, is structured this way. Though this used to be a good thing, it has become a strict zero-sum game where the difficulty has been raised several times over. The notion of pressure creating diamonds, or how only a certain number of kernels pop when heat is applied, is the systematic ideology that guides the institutional distribution of trauma. Now, I will revisit David A. Hughes' research on COVID-19 and the mass distribution of trauma to populations. Hughes points to numerous reasons as to why the events of 2020 occurred, revealing distinct factors such as the protests of 2019 that occurred in response to what was covered through independent journalism and shown in social media. The weapons and tools of the Western propagandist media machine, language, memes, used to deceive the masses for decades, had become less effective after the revelation, sparking outrage across different regions, roughly 1 in 5 countries. A cornerstone of Hughes' work is an in-depth look into the institutional origin of trauma-induced mind control. For instance, the Rician, or Risian, however that's pronounced, the Risian theory of war and social control by John Rawlings Rees, and the mental health shock troop subordinates of his, all of which were funded by Rockefeller. A model explored by Hughes, which states that shell-shocked soldiers from World War I could be controlled or made to follow exact orders when the shock is artificially induced under contained experimental control mechanisms. Hughes' research connects the 2020 global response to the findings of CIA mind control programs of the 1950s and 60s, such as MKUltra and Artichoke. These programs yielded the QBARC Counterintelligence Interrogation Manual of 1963, which emphasizes that the most effective way to break a subject's will is not physical violence, but psychological shock. This depatterning involves exploding the subject's familiar world and self-image, reducing them to an almost vegetative state in which their critical faculties are suspended. trauma-based mind control, the mechanics of mass abuse. One of the most provocative aspects of Hughes' work is his exploration of trauma-based mind control, a field traditionally associated with the fringes of ritual abuse literature, but which he argues has been macro-scaled into a state-sponsored tool for population management. Hughes analyzes how techniques documented in ritual abuse settings, such as near-death experiences, making victims feel responsible for the deaths of others, and fake rescues, were mirrored in the COVID-19 operation. Ritual abuse, Project Monarch, and the finders Hughes examines the historical evidence surrounding programs like Project Monarch and organizations such as the finders in the Franklin scandal. I think I said the finders twice. Which are alleged, by the way, to have involved the torture and ritualized abuse of children for mind control and political blackmail purposes. He notes that while official substantiation is withheld via classification, a plausible pattern of abuse emerges from the testimonies of thousands of unrelated victims. He suggests that the sudden uptick in diagnoses of dissociative identity disorder, DID, since 1980 may be linked to covert mass-scale experiments in creating disassociated self-states that can be exploited via hypnosis and Pavlovian conditioning. Hughes provides a forensic analysis of the face mask as an instrument of psychological torture rather than a medical device. He points to the 2002 images from Guantanamo Bay, which showed inmates wearing surgical masks alongside blackout goggles and earmuffs, tools of sensory deprivation specifically designed to induce PTSD and psychological breakdown. Part 4. Memification of trauma. Trauma becomes memed. To reiterate, the meme is a selfish gene that replicates without reservation. Repeat, repeat, repeat is all it knows. With this mechanic, trauma is normalized and regulated under contained silicon systems. The distribution of it occurs through left or right-wing pundits who embody the upper class, the PMC/Kshatriya, and represent the 1%er priesthood of the world. It functions as a virtual signaling proponent that renders us weakened. That weakened state causes us to become more suggestive, making us easier to command, bearing in mind the potentiality of language or memetics being organic. As it propagates trauma, the organism is morphed into a more parasitic entity that feeds on our fear and dread. Gatekeepers, such as the PMC Kshatriya tier, are responsible for this morphology as they use it to transmit virtue signaling ideology. This is more than just an attempt at controlling the case. It is very much about keeping us out of their communities and institutions, perhaps far worse than the nobility of olden times. I've cited Liu with respect to the disdain they hold towards us, when the doors or barriers to entry of intellectual labor were far less rigid. It ultimately became overpopulated by the communities that shaped the landscape of today, creating an extremely tight pipeline where people can only succeed if they commit a fully self-inflicted menticide. This infliction brought about through rigid virtue hoarding conditioning. It's not just a matter of using trauma as a litmus test for those who are allowed to join higher learning institutions or intellectual labor entry, as much as it is a matter of the molding of the mind, the diffusion of the old self and transformation or creation of the newly welcomed virtue hoarder who swears by their lived experience, or the PTSD flashes they get from a messed up latte order. The meme is the weapon of the current world war. The omni-war that Hughes posits is occurring right under our noses, not just through violence, but through propaganda and media, through the silicon medium, and through the black box intellectual labor markets emerging in the near future. Language can function much more quickly and at large numbers, much larger numbers. An invasion of the mind occurs via memetic entropy, and the only way to counter it is with our own memetic constructs, as Dr. Asher posits. The large language model is essentially the purely electrical state of language as we know it, functioning through machinery transmitted at higher speeds. We can create our own models to counter the invasive ones. I believe so. Or rather, verbal countering thereof. However countering is gone about, awareness is probably the best way to retain our sense of self, though it must constantly be exercised, specifically our metacognitive abilities and self-awareness and so forth. For these memetic weapons are never in a state of rest, only undergoing changes in frequency and purity, as I stated in my previous video, PMCs of America. In my previous video, the PMCs of America, I went on to explain how memes and language are essentially functioning in a manner that is similar to thermodynamic laws, where they can neither be destroyed, rather they can be, all they do is change state, like energy. The audit America is a Souls game. As a huge Elden nerd, this is something I would appreciate deeply. However, it is not the kind where you grind until you get good. No matter how good you get, if you are not one of them, you will have nothing. The only difference between the neoliberal and neocon PMC is that one of them admits their hatred for you. Moreover, the weapons they use autonomously ensure we fail. The memetic entropy that causes mass menticide, resulting in the utter destruction of the youth who have been the most prone to this wave. The reversion of younger generations to 90s style retro technology is indicative of the invasive nature of linguistic parasitic memes that invade through modern internet mediums today. Indicative such that the preference for older technology prevents such invasive properties. The presence of language models that control data flow and magnify on the most destructive behaviors or belief systems has created a retroactive influx for the perceived safetiness of 90s tech, the perceived closeness brought forth by it, the avoidance of social media and beyond. Not all Gen Z or Alpha shows a love of 90s retro technology. However, it is noticeable indeed. It is a trend. The rising anxiety levels, the toxicity of memetics diffused into social media platforms that not only poison their minds but feed on them. All of it alludes to the mass mind control posited by Hughes. Virtue hoarding themed memes create mass confusion in the young, allowing them to become prime rib for transhumanist experiments. Take the diffusion of gender differences for an instance. LGBTQ and other progressive themed movements that really did not focus on ethnic disparities were never about disparities at all. They were memes, they were embedded and installed into the brains of hopeful youths. Again, children are always prime rib for MK Ultra style conditioning. Now it's done in mass. And programming, of course. Virtue signaling rhetoric is the social defense mechanism against criticism or scrutiny, where individuals are either canceled or banned, a firewall that burns anything attempting to get through it. These pundits, movements, organizations, none were ever about the progress or the people advocated for. They were just memes that siphoned resources from the very same people they claimed to advocate for. Just follow the paper trail. To keep this research live and bypass the noise, please signal the algorithm by liking and subscribing to the audit. If you want to move beyond passive observation and begin auditing your own cognitive environment, I've developed the memetic app, a tool designed to map these linguistic loops in real time. That is the practical application of the research you see here. The link to download is in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Your viewership is not taken for granted.